Hello everyone and welcome to our discussions today on international law. So let's start today's discussion. So let's take up a brief introduction of international law. Here you see there are 3 points A, B, C, which are international morality, world public opinion, and international law, which is our topic of discussion today. So these factors are the limiting and regulating factors in international relations, which means that the national power and behavior of states at international level or at international platform is regulated by these three factors. But these factors are not as effective as the power of an individual state, since all states are sovereign and independent states. They act as an independent states at international fora. So these factors cannot fully regulate their behavior. This cannot be a controlling one, but these are important factors of influence, and these are the factors, you can say, which puts a kind of limit in on the exercise of a national power of a state. Like a state cannot arbitrarily act as on international fora or platform. So international law is one that conditions the behavior of sovereign states in international relations. It acts as an important source of limitation on national power of each state. So national power of each state is regulated by or is limited by international law. They have to behave in a particular way, they have to behave in an orderly way. And since it is acting as an limiting factor on the exercise of national power of each state at international fora, so it helps in the maintenance of international peace, international order, morality, and this also brings in a kind of stability. So this provides for an orderly conduct of international relations. So in international relations, this international laws origin and growth, you can see this has come on part of states, that states have realized that they cannot survive in vacuum, or they cannot remain isolated from each other, and that their existence as sovereign states depends on their adherences to a law which is based on principles of what? Principles of justice, which has fair dealings, and law which is established by consent of all. This term international law, as you see, Jeremy Bentham has coined this term for the first time in 1780. And here I have mentioned a definition of international law which is given by Oppenheim. So he defines it as international law is the name for the body of customary and conventional rules which are considered legally binding by civilized states in their intercourse with each other. So this is how he defines international law. So here you see threefold classification of international law. So subject matter of international law is classified as such. 3 points you see is the law of peace, the law of war, and the law of neutrality. Law of peace is law of peace because the other two comes, that is the law of war and neutrality comes into play only when there is a conflictual situation or is a kind of war situation at international fora. The law of war includes rules regarding hostilities. It also involves use of military power in conflict and the treatment of enemy nationals and property. So this is something which comes into play at the time of war. The law of neutrality is something which defines rights and duties of neutrals and belligerents in relationship with one another. Neutrals that are not involved in war or conflict. A state is neutral when it does not participate in a war. That means it's remain far away from war is one, that is a neutral state. War which is in progress, and also when it treats the belligerents impartially. So this is how the law of neutrality operates. So here you see two schools. These are two distinct and rival school of thought with regard to basis of international law. So these are two opposite schools. As I say, these are rivals. So first is naturalist school and the second is positivist school. So naturalist school asserts that the law of nature is the basis of international law. That means international law is something which is based on law of the nature, and because of this it is binding, because it is based on or is the part of law of nature. It is like all the laws that is discovered by man rather than made by man. That means man has not made this natural law, rather man has only discovered it in a form of law of nature. So this must be binding upon all of the states. Opposite to it is the positivist school of thought. So the theory of positivism provides that rules of international law are in the final analysis of the same character as positive municipal law, that is the man-made law. Now we have come to multiple choice question part for today's discussion, and the very first question for today asks for who coined the term international law. So international law, it is also known as or called as a public international law or law of nations, you can say, the body of legal rules, norms, and the standards that apply between sovereign states and other entities that are legally recognized as international actors. And this term was coined by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham. The second question asks for who among the following is known as father of international law. So among them is the Dutch jurist Hugo Grotius, that has influenced the development of the field to an extent that unequaled by any other theorist, that his contribution to the development of this concept has been an unmatchable effort, and that is why he has been called as a father of international law, and he has also produced many influential writings. So the next question asks for which school of thought regards supremacy of the law of nature. So as we have discussed in the basis of international law, there are two schools of thought, the naturalist and the positivist. So the scholars who followed Grotius, the father of international law, can be grouped into two schools, the naturalist and the positivist. So the naturalist included the German jurist Samuel, who stressed the supremacy of the law of nature. And in contrast, the positivist writers such as Church, he emphasized the actual practice of contemporary states over concepts that derives from biblical sources, that's Greek thought or Roman law. So the two schools were naturalist and positivist, and naturalist school of thought regards supremacy of the law of nature. The next is which institution among the following can be said to be the governing agency of international law? So this is an important question also. Here you see four options. Among them, the achievement of being the agency or institution which regulates uh, at international level is the United Nations, and it is the international uh, organization which sees the development of a body of international law, and which is also central to promoting economic and social development, as well as its main objective is the establishment of international peace and order and security. The international law is enshrined in conventions treaties and standards, and many of these treaties that are brought about by United Nations, which forms the basis of the law and that governs relations among the nations at international level. So this is United Nations organization. So the next and the last one here is that International Law Commission was established in the year. So International Law Commission was established by General Assembly in the year 1947 with aim of promoting progressive development of international law and its codification. So the commission is composed of 32 members and they are collectively representing the world's principal legal system and serves as experts in their individual capacity and not as representatives of their government. So 1947 is the year on which International Law Commission came into existence. While our discussions today on international relations and you can refer them. Thank you.